What do you want, Gao?
Just thought someone ought to tell you your son's battalion got captured. You boys hear what the Fire Nation did with their last group of Earth Kingdom prisoners?
Dressed them up in Fire Nation uniforms and put them on the front line unarmed, way I heard it. Then they just watched.
You watch your mouth.
He was tall and terrible there in the road, looming up gigantic in the half-light. He was the man I saw the first day, a stranger, dark and foreboding, forging his lone way out of an unknown past in the utter loneliness of his own immovable and instinctive defiance. He was the symbol of all the dim, formless imaginings of danger and terror. The impact of the menace that marked him was like a physical blow. One of Avatar: The Last Airbender's greatest strengths was a trust in its young audience. Trust to take in its hefty themes of war, responsibility, and the supposed value of violence. Trust to follow along with a complicated plot over 3 seasons involving 4 kingdoms and dozens of characters. And a trust that the show could play around with the format without losing you. For example, an episode where our main protagonist doesn't show up at all, and instead focuses on the first season's main villain on the road to becoming a complicated anti-hero. Originally airing on May 12, 2006, Zuko Alone is the 7th episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender's 2nd season, the 27th episode overall. It was the 4th of 8 episodes written by Elizabeth Welch Ehas, her only television credits, which is a shame because her episodes tend to be bangers. It was directed by Lauren MacMullen, who had directed several episodes of The Simpsons. Zuko, the banished crown prince of the Fire Nation, finds himself traveling the Earth Kingdom alone, astride his ostrich horse with dwindling food and water. He eventually winds up in a small village where all the young, strong men have left for the war, leaving only the riffraff of the Earth Kingdom's army, bullies throwing their weight around. Zuko ends up staying the night on a farm, helping them make repairs to the barn to repay them for their generosity. The farmer's young boy is fascinated by Zuko, by his swords, by his past. But Zuko is quiet, hesitant to talk about himself, something the boy's father recognizes and respects.
So how'd you get that scar?
Oh! It's not nice to bother people about things they might not want to talk about. A man's past is his business.
Part of the reason for his silence is because Zuko's from the Fire Nation, who are at war with the Earth Nation. But part of it is also that he's been struggling with what his role in this world should be. He has failed time and again to live up to the standards of his father and his supposed role in the kingdom. And now, having made some uneasy, temporary alliances with Aang the Avatar, what does Zuko truly want? The truth is, this internal conflict goes back years. About half the episode is taken up with flashbacks to Zuko's childhood, how he stood weak next to his sister Azula, the crown princess already bought into the ruthless, imperialist ideology of her grandfather's empire. She is a creepy little kid.
I still think our dad would make a much better Fire Lord than his royal tea-loving kookiness.
We get our first look at Zuko's mother, a kind and caring woman, and follow the events that led up to her disappearance. What I find most distressing about these flashbacks isn't the terrifying might of the Fire Nation, the mountainous dark presence of the Fire Lord, the shifty machinations of the future Fire Lord, the growing psychopathy of the young Azula, or how all of that threatens a good woman like Zuko's mother. Instead, it's this brief moment we get with Uncle Iroh. At this point in time, the Crown Prince of the Fire Kingdom, writing a letter in the midst of leading invasion forces into the Earth Kingdom.
If the city is as magnificent as its wall, Ba Sing Se must be something to behold. I hope you all may see it someday. If we don't burn it to the ground first,
We see much of the Iroh we know from the series here. Charming, a love for laughter, and caring of his family. But we're seeing these traits from a man actively leading an army into another nation, chuckling at the homes he's destroying and the lives he's ending. It's hard to imagine Iroh like this, a willing participant in evil. And it shouldn't have taken the death of his son to put him on a path of being something better, but here we are. And it's a path Zuko is on right now. The present-day portions of the episode are purposefully evocative of certain old westerns, with the image of the dark stranger walking into town and the showdown in the street at high noon. More specifically, this episode is a take on Jack Schaefer's 1949 novel, Shane, the story about a man with a mysterious past full of violence, who stays on a small farm and catches the admiration of the farmer's son, but when bullies put pressure on the farm, the man is forced into violence that he had been working so hard to avoid. There are some major differences, though. Unlike Zuko, we never learn the nature of the titular Shane's shady past, and instead view him through the perspective of the young farmer's son, who is fascinated in the man in a way a child is fascinated when finding a scorpion. This admiration spills into the book's flashes of violence, where Shane is forced to pick up his gun. There is a reverence here for what Shane is and does. I would think of him most vividly in that single flashing instant when he whirled to shoot Fletcher on the balcony at Grafton's saloon. I would see again the power and grace of coordinate force, beautiful beyond comprehension. I would see the man and the weapon wedded in one indivisible deadliness. I would see the man and the tool, a good man and a good tool, doing what had to be done. If you've ever seen your NRA-loving uncle post a quote on Facebook about how a gun is a tool comparable to a shovel and is only as bad as the person using it, that comes from this book. And Zuko alone is fascinating in that context because, while the plot beats are largely the same as the book, the episode suggests that, actually, a person's past does matter. That who Zuko was and what he represented is something to be considered. The episode ends with a showdown, just like in the book, and while Shane walks away the hero, Zuko ends up walking away hated by the people he tried to save. Because you can't actually better yourself by pushing your past deeds and the system that created you under the rug. You haven't been magically turned into a dog and need to do 100 good deeds to become human again. Being remorseful doesn't mean putting it all behind you. It means understanding what has to be done, changing yourself and doing the work to make the situation better. While Zuko does help people here, save people from harm, that is not in any way a redemption. And the journey for that redemption is still stretched out long ahead of him. Zuko alone is a fascinating character piece, a necessary work in developing the titular character and taking him a step forward in joining the side of the heroes. The flashbacks give us a very in-depth look at the home life that would make Zuko the person he would be at the start of the series, and the present-day plot gives us an idea of what Zuko could be if he stays on this path. And subverting a couple of creaky old conservative Western tropes is a nice bonus. Of course, none of this should come as a surprise. Avatar: The Last Airbender would end up having arguably the most sophisticated writing for any Nickelodeon show. We've demonstrated that here before, and we'll demonstrate that here again, especially when we get to the main Knacks episode a bajillion years from now. In the meantime, this was just a sample.